So there are two hugely important things when I buy a property that I think far outweigh all the other traits or characteristics of a deal. Number one is that it's got substantial upside and that there's some immediate ways to force appreciation into the deal. And I'm gonna go through some ways that we can do that and specific things that I look for when I'm underwriting, say, hey, if I do all these things, is the property gonna go up a lot in value? Number two is it is a great piece of real estate, and there's a lot of things that go into what makes up a great piece of real estate. I'm gonna go into that in a lot more detail in just a moment, but generally I want the ugly duckling of a neighborhood or a corridor. So it's like the cousin that never lived up to its full potential. Otherwise, you have low vacancy in the submarket, but this thing is just tired. It's the eyesore. And so it has a lot more that we can do to increase the value of the property, to get it up to its pro forma value or its highest and best use. Okay, so what we'll cover then is my 2022 buying criteria, places where we have historically found some of these unicorns or more motivated sellers or more distressed deals so we can be as efficient as possible on the pursuit here. And then some of the things that I always look for to force appreciation and let's say double the value of a property. So for 2022, I'm widening the strike zone a little bit beyond just retail because I've been backfilling vacancy with more office users, with more medical users. So let's take a look at that too. Bring on the medical, bring on the office. You got industrial or some small bay or some of these business park type properties, get a lot of calls on that stuff. So certainly willing to take a look at it. I still want it to be fundamentally sound real estate, but I'd like to buy a lot more than I did last year. We've got the capacity for it. I will tell you right now that I don't really care the condition that the building's in today. I'm not worried about the incoming cap rate. I'm not worried about the price per foot. But what I'm looking at is how much lift I can create. So yes, I might buy it at a 2 cap or a 0 cap today, but I can turn it into a 10 cap that we can then go to the market and sell for a 6.5 cap. So that's what I'm looking at. So the number one thing that I look for right away, or I'm gonna talk to a broker on the phone and say, hey, tell me the problem with this ownership, the landlord, or the property, the big issue that we're gonna go in there and solve. We're gonna write a check, we're gonna spend time, we're gonna put energy into fixing what? If there's not a big problem, how are we gonna justify a deeply discounted purchase price? If a bank would lend on a property, it may not be a good fit. And so looking for those deals that are harder to buy, that eliminate some of the buyer pool, that might require bridge or hard money or all cash purchases, environmental issues, you name it. There's issues that other people don't want to deal with. If a 1031 buyer would purchase this deal just looking for yield, that's probably not a fit, right? I'm gonna buy something that's broken, fix it up, and then turn around and sell it to the 1031 guy. And so we wanna be able to tell a story. Hey, he went in and did all these things, spent all this money so that you could then have a turnkey asset. Okay, so let's dive into some of the characteristics of the deals that I mostly look at. Again, these are suggestions or ideas or maybe the ideal deal, but if you find a smaller one, let's take a look at it. It's a little further away, let's take a look at it. If it's a little older, let's take a look at it. The more, the merrier. Generally, I'm looking at $2 to $8 million because it's a little bit bigger than what some of the doctors and dentists might be pursuing on their own, but probably a little smaller than maybe what some of the REITs or institutional investors are willing to get out of bed and take a look at. Size-wise, 20 to 80,000 feet is the sweet spot. I'll look at smaller, I'll look at bigger, but that's where I spend most of my time hunting through CoStar looking. It's probably got a lot of vacancy. I've bought stuff that's 100% vacant. Almost everything has been at least 25% vacant. I guess there's an exception. I bought a 100% occupied deal from a bank where every lease was month to month and they were dying to get it off their book. So I had a motivated seller there, but I tend to look a lot at high vacancy properties because it gives us a great justification to go in and offer a price that's reflective of the current condition of the property, not what it's gonna be worth someday after I spend a ton of time, energy, and money getting it up to that pro forma value. All right, and then there's some of the must-haves. Want to have good traffic. I like to see at least 25,000 cars a day so that a name brand national tenant would take a look at it. Want to have good access, want to have good visibility. You know, think hard corner if we could get it. Location wise, I prefer to be within a half hour of the airport. I'm loving that Southeast Valley, but probably what's more important than that is that we're in an area that's in high demand from tenants. So I get a lot of calls for Tempe and Chandler and Gilbert and Queen Creek. Age wise, I prefer 1980 be 1990 or newer. You know, it's nice to have working mechanicals and systems in there and be doing more cosmetic cleanup and renovation. So you might be saying, hey, that kind of sounds like an oxymoron to have a building with all these great characteristics, but that's completely vacant. And yes, it's probably 1 out of every 10 deals or listings that I look through, but they are out there. There are a lot of aging buildings. There are a lot of, let's say, generational transitions that didn't go so well. There's deferred maintenance, there's mismanagement, there's groups that are undercapitalized. There's people who aren't willing to write big TI checks, that aren't willing to pay their brokers well. Those are the signals that would say, hey, this one probably warrants further investigation. Couple other suggestions, you know these probably: late payers, tenants that are going under, deals that are falling out of escrow, or the seller is just getting fatigued and says, hey, I need something that's a sure thing. You know, I'll take a hit on the price just to get this closed. One other idea is looking at inaccurate data. Let's say in CoStar, something's listed as 100% occupied. We know it's got a lot of vacancy. That could be an opportunity to sneak in and get something that's maybe a little less picked over. So those are some of the hints on places where we've been able to find deeply discounted property where we can increase the value by at least 50%. On the last 8 deals that we bought, all those have had at least 50% upside potential. So I'm going to be looking at that. And then finally, let's get into ways to force appreciation into the property. So I'm looking at these as I'm underwriting a tired, old, busted, crusty deal, saying, hey, if I put on new paint, a new parking lot, a new monument sign, new building signage, if I freshen up the facade, if I polish up the landscaping, all those things are gonna increase the curb appeal of the property. When we go inside the suites, we'll probably white box or clean up all the suites so that, again, a mom and pop walking through there can see their shop and not feel gross that the power is off and there's crap everywhere and debris left over from the last tenant. So those are the little things that I'll do to make it very attractive. Additionally, is there ways to increase the usability of a property? Does it need rezoning? You know, do we need a special use permit? Can we add a drive-through to it? Do we write tenant improvement checks that the last ownership group was not willing to do? Do I need to offer leasing or broker bonuses in order to attract some tenants to the property? Am I willing to give away free rent? Of course, you know that. These are all the things that we can implement after closing to increase the value of the property, bump rents, and get it leased up sooner rather than later. If you see something that looks like that smells like that, definitely email it over to me, text, call, whatever. I want to get it on my tour list. I want to take a look at it and do a desktop analysis. I want to drive it when I'm in town and look forward to buying a lot more value add properties this year. You know, we're set up in a way where brokers can represent us on the buy side, help us with leasing if that's your thing, turn around, relist the property on the back end, and probably have a year's lead time to go find a 1031 buyer on the back end and put themselves in a position to maybe triple or quadruple dip the commission on these deals. Thank you. Thanks for submitting deals. Thanks for working all those inside angles. Thank you for your market expertise. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for smashing that like button. Thanks for commenting, and we'll talk to you soon.